evening. Welcome to the First Friday Show. I'm Mililani Trask, and I'll be your hostess for this May 4th, 2012 edition of First Friday, the Unauthorized News. If you're on the island of Oahu and it is May 4th, then you're watching a live show. You're welcome to call in with your comments or your questions for either myself or our very special guest, Senator Malama Solomon. We'll be taking a look tonight at the legislative last 4 months to see what were the most important bills that passed this session and what were the critical bills that did not. If you're viewing, give us a call with your questions or your comments. The number tonight is 834-2886. 834-2886. We have our volunteers standing by to take your questions down. Before we begin taking a look at the legislative session and interviewing our guest, Senator Solomon, I wanted to take a look at something very important that happened yesterday, and for once it's a good piece of news. Yesterday afternoon, one of the OHA trustees went to see the governor. He left a letter for the governor to read and a message asking the governor to give him a call. 4 of the OHA trustees had signed that letter that went to the governor, and First Friday is happy to bring it out now. This is what the letter says. Aloha, Governor Abercrombie. It is with great pleasure that we, the undersigned trustees of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, write this letter to you in gratitude for appointing Trustee Carmen Hulu Lindsey to our board. Trustee Lindsey's knowledge of state government and her expertise in real estate and land development has had a very positive effect on all the members of our board. She has diligently attended all of our meetings and has done her very best to learn as much about our organization as anyone could possibly learn in such a short period of time. Some of us did not know her prior to her appointment to the board. However, her positive personality, willingness to learn, and her can-do attitude have been a godsend to our board. In our opinion, she is an excellent candidate to be a permanent Maui trustee. We have asked her to run for OHA Maui trustee seat in the 2012 election, which she had planned to do prior to her appointment. However, she explained that she had given you her word that she would not seek the Maui seat in November. We are saddened by this news and have asked Trustee Lindsey why this request was asked of her, because other appointees were not subject to such a request. Trustee Lindsey's response was that she did not know. However, she said that she would like to run for the Maui seat. It is for these reasons that we ask you to reconsider your request to her not to run for the Maui seat in November. We thank you in advance for your consideration of our request. Aloha Pumehana, signed Roena Akana, Trustee at Large, John Waihe'e IV, Trustee at Large, Don Cataluna, Trustee for Kauai and Ni'ihau, and Bob Lindsey, Hawaii Island Trustee. When I received this letter yesterday, I was very happy because for once it shows that the trustees over at OHA really have been working together, and it shows that they want to continue to do so. When I heard about the requirement that had been imposed on Trustee Lindsey by the governor, it didn't sit right with me. The governor made many appointments. He didn't impose this restriction on any other appointee. And that told me something, that our governor really is not the kind of person that would impose this kind of a restriction. You know, when you consider that every citizen has a right to vote, to serve their people, to serve their state, and this is a right that Governor Abercrombie himself many times has availed himself of, and he will be running again in coming elections for the seat that he's holding now. It didn't make sense, but later I learned that it really was not something Governor Abercrombie wanted to do. He did it because there was fighting and factions at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Well, we're happy tonight to be looking at major legislation that passed because OHA trustees for once were able to work together, and I'm talking about the settlement bill. I'm going to join these OHA trustees. I'm going to send an email to our governor, Governor Abercrombie, and I'm going to ask him to do the right thing, to release Trustee Carmen Hulu Lindsey from Maui from her word and to let her run so that we can hopefully leave it up to the Hawaiian voters. You know, for myself, I know there's fighting at OHA, and I know that a restriction was laid down. But every Hawaiian has the right to vote for the candidate of their choice. And if we have a trustee that is doing a good job for Maui, why shouldn't we let our peoples be the judge? Let's let the voters decide this one. And I'm sending my email to the governor. I've asked that we run it, governor.abercrombie@hawaii.gov, to encourage him to let us have our right to vote for Hulu Lindsey. Tonight, we're having a very special friend and a very special guest coming to the First Friday show. I would like to welcome Senator Malama Solomon, who is not only a classmate and an old friend, but whose family for many generations has been close to my own. Welcome to the First Friday show, Senator Solomon. We're so happy to have you as a guest.
Thank you very much.
You know, before we really get into the tough legislative questions, the bills that made it and didn't, I wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit about yourself, your family, the Beamer family, quite well known and beloved by our people for many generations. So share with us a little bit about yourself and what really led you to accept a governor's appointment to be a senator for the Big Island.
Well, as you know, Millie, I was the first Office of Hawaiian Affairs trustee.
That's right.
And then, of course, I ran for the first, well, when Hawaii went from multi-senatorial districts to single-member districts. So in 1982, I became the state senator of District 1, which I'm still holding and representing, thanks to my appointment. And in those days, I had a canoe district. I had half of Maui, and I also had half of the Big Island. So,
well, you're a senator. For some reason, every time you've been in office, your district has been somewhat different.
Yes,
including
true.
one island and then two islands.
Yes. And then, of course, then it was reapportioned again. So every 4 years that I ran after that, I had a new district. And that was because the island of Hawaii was growing so rapidly. And most of the growth was in West Hawaii. So for me, it has always been a challenge because my constituencies have always changed, but the temperament of the district remained pretty much the same. You know, agricultural in nature. We have a lot of most of the conservation state lands in my district. I always had a very large geographical district.
That's right.
You know, and so it's always been a challenge. As far as my ohana is concerned, thank you for all of those kind words. But my family, we're celebrating our 150th anniversary in terms of our hula halau.
I heard.
Beamer Solomon halau opohala.
You know, we have some beautiful, since we're talking about the halau, we have some beautiful photos of them.
Thank you.
Tell me, 150 years
Right.
of hula in your family, and along with that, hula music.
Yes.
But now, in addition to being an elected official, you actually are, with your sister, maintaining the halau.
Well, let me just explain that situation. When I had decided to go into politics, and yes, my sister Hulali managed my campaigns, my OHA, my bid for OHA, and also for the senatorial district, we were told at the time by our grandmother, the Lo'ea Louise Beamer, that we had to decide if we were going to go into politics, then we had to recess the hula halau, because she felt at the time politics and the arts really didn't go hand in hand. So we made that decision. So in fact, the hula halau was in recess for almost 20 years while I was engaged in politics. When I was POW in 1996, then we had brought the hula halau back to where it is today. And the reason for that is, as you know, I have a daughter, and she's
one of the beautiful hula dancers.
Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful
And
girl.
she's 17 years old. Prior to that, we only had boys. You know, my brother, I only had one brother, and he died in Vietnam. He had a son, and my sister had two boys. So as far as our halau is concerned, our halau strength has always been in wahine hula. You know, although my Uncle Keola and my Uncle Mahi Beamer had always danced, but we never really taught male hula. We were really focused on wahine hula.
And also had your own style,
Absolutely.
the Beamer style.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, sort of rolling as the sea did. You know, it was a very distinct style,
Yes.
and of all the halau, that motion is still referred to as the
Beamer method.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
You know, to this day, even during the 20-year period when you didn't have one. But where is the halau located, and the name of the halau?
The halau is Beamer Solomon halau o Po'ohala. Po'ohala was given by our grandmother, Louise Beamer, and Po'ohala means to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. My sister Hulali, who was chosen to be the hula master, she's the 5th generation. And she's done a really fabulous job in that she's taken the halau to different heights. And what I mean by that is that we've just got through with a series of 3 hula dramas. We've performed, we were invited to perform these dramas, New York Symphony Space this past summer. Prior to that, the drama was featured at the National Hispanic Cultural Center in Albuquerque. This past September, we were in Japan. And what this drama talks about is our method of dance. And our method of dance goes back to the Kalakaua dynasty. My great-grandmother, Helen Deshay Beamer, who was quite a famous composer. Yeah. Her mother, Isabella Hali'ala, was very good friends with the Kalakauas. And the bond that they had shared was music. So I think that it was this relationship with the Kalakauas was one of the reasons of why my great-grandmother became such a famous musician, because she was well educated in all of the arts. And she took Hawaiian music to being, you know, to be played by an orchestra, to be played in symphony kind of music, you know, because her forte was the piano. So yes,
you know, she did bring Hawaiian music into many areas.
Correct.
Right. Where before people thought Hawaiian music is what you played on the back porch with the ukulele, but you would never hear an orchestra. You would never hear it performed. But you know, the thing about her was that she was so remarkable. She had such great musical talent. I mean, to this day, her compositions are still played. Her compositions are still treated as contemporary music. Correct. But she was just a great, had such great musical talent. You know? Well,
what I found, you know, that was so intriguing, because, you know, I did all of this script writing, because that is my participation in the halau. I'm the kakao olelo. So I do all of the research work on any kind of performance or any kind of dance that we so desire to do. And what I found out about my grandmother is that she lived in a time and space in Hawaii where they had to do a bridge. And the bridge was King David Kalakaua was the ali'i that was responsible for bringing the hula back to the forefront, because the hula had gone underground because of the missionaries, and they thought that it was a pagan dance simply because many of the hulas patronize and honor the Hawaiian gods. So the challenge of the Beamer women was to be able to bring the hula back to the forefront. And as you know now, the Deshays were also the kahus of Kawaiha'o Church.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this was really remarkable, because if you look at many of her compositions, the kauna of her songs are so deep in terms of really honoring, you know, the Hawaiian gods and goddesses and keeping their memory alive. But yet, it's surrounded by so much of what we feel is the beauty of Hawaii. And I think it was the focus, like her chant of Le'oha'ena, that takes you to Ke'o. You know, just the focus of the beauty, the geographic location she's talking about. So I think that this is what the general public was able to accept. So because of her willingness and because of her artistry, that she was able to unite the two, I think that this is what had really contributed a lot, you know, to the hula being where it is today. Because the hula was accepted in all fronts.
Yeah, we don't really, this history that you give us, for many dancers, for many people, they don't really know that there was a time when the hula was almost rendered non-existent because of the bias of the missionary. But that it has returned is without a doubt. And today, you know, we have this real important part of our culture that we celebrate every year on the Big Island. You know, they say that the Beamer family, generation after generation, has always had those who were able to sing and play music. But when it comes to you, Senator, people want to hear you sing, they would have to go to the Senate, down at the legislature. You played a major role this year in working with and supporting the passage of the OHA settlement bill. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that. That was, I think, just a major feat after how many years? How many years has there been a struggle and a fight between OHA and the state? Somehow the OHA settlement bill has passed, and it was actually signed into law. We have some video on that as well, but tell us about the settlement measure.
Well, when the governor had asked me to, if I would consider coming back to the legislature, I really had to think long and hard about it. You know, when all my tenure in politics has been really stormy, you know, in terms of my tenure in OHA, and, you know, and I was always in a time and place in politics where we were building something. You know, just like when I was in, you know, as a senator for the 1st senatorial district, we were making a transition from a plantation community to world-class hotel destinations, you know, looking at the development of Mauna Kea for astronomy, you know, and that was my same political history with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. You know, we just got started, you know, we were thinking of what's our mission statement, where the office wants to be, and so, you know, I've been with the Hawaiian issues from that moment, from 1982 till today. So when the governor had asked me if I would consider coming back to the legislature, I had a really heart-to-heart talk with the governor. I told the governor I'm interested in coming if the governor was very serious about looking at a possible settlement, looking at the recognition, you know, of the Hawaiian people, the Kanaka Maoli, which we did last session. I had talked to the governor about looking at the inventory, the land inventories, you know, to finally get them going, you know, and get them to a place where we all kind of know what's out there. And I felt that Neil, because I served with Neil, you know, 8 years in the Senate. And I felt that the governor was always very much in support of the Hawaiian issues. He had an institutional memory, such as myself, as to the struggle, you know, the struggle. Now, when I started with the Hawaiian issues, you know, let's get real about it. You know, they were kicking us out of Kalama Valley. They were kicking us out of Sand Island.
Yeah, it was hard times.
Yeah, it was really hard times, you know. We had the Puna'ewa Airport sit-in, you know, so.
Many demonstrations. Hawaiians were being arrested on many islands.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was
you know,
quite a bit of strife.
Yeah, talking about the dogs and the SWAT team. You know, so my whole goal as being a political leader, you know, coming from that history, you know, I thought that this was in the new millennium, you know, that we really start a new day, you know, when the Hawaiians are sitting across the table, you know, from the legislators, or sitting across the table from the governor, you know, discussing our entitlements in a, what I would call, in a time and space of reason. And the governor agreed. So when he agreed, I said, okay, I'm coming back to the legislature.
So you were the one, when he came to ask you to run, you were the one that told him there would be the condition that these critical issues, the settlement, recognition, the inventory, that these things would have to move. Now, last year, you were able to get the inventory
and the recognition
bill through, and the recognition, which we refer to as the Roll Commission. Those two moved, and then this year that left Senate Bill 2783, which we're referring to as a settlement bill. That was a 30-year disagreement that many people earlier in the session said, you know, this thing is not going to pass. There's going to be a bloody fight in there, and it's going to wind up on the cutting room floor. But that did not happen.
No.
Why? Why?
Well, I think that, you know, as far as the Hawaiian community is concerned, I think that the Hawaiian community is much better organized. You know, we have the Native Hawaiian Chamber, they were very instrumental because they came and they testified on many of the issues. The Hawaiian societies got more involved. And, I'm talking about from the Royal Order of Kamehameha. I'm talking about, the Hawaiian civic clubs. Of course, we still had our sovereign groups that were there at the table. But I noticed that there was a real change of attitude by everyone sitting in the room. And like for me, one of my motivations is really my 17-year-old daughter. When I look at her, I tell myself, do I want her to carry this kaumaha? Because this is what this is. Do I want her to carry this sorrow? When I feel that, we are the ones that can really resolve. Because for many of us, like including myself, that I just shared in the beginning of our musical legacy, we're just 3 generations away from the kingdom. So for many of us, for many of us in our generation, we were the ones that were really brought up with our kupuna. We were the ones where our kupuna spoke fluent Hawaiian. Not the kind of Hawaiian that's now taught at the university, but the real authentic conversational Hawaiian, and even the authentic, what we call the kauna Hawaiian, that has the higher meaning. We were the ones that were brought up where our grandparents were still independent, of what we call the Western European culture. They decided how they were going to interact with the culture. So we're the last generation. So I felt very strongly, as I've always felt, like even when I was back there in 1982, that we're the ones that have to set the foundation, because we're the ones that can do it. Because to set that foundation, you have to have that na'au inside of you, where you're not willing just to compromise for dollars. The settlement goes deeper than just dollars.
Well, that's one thing that's so interesting to me about this settlement because, as you point out, your daughter is 17. I mean, all the kids in our family, this fight had been going on for 13 years when your daughter was born, and it's been going on her whole life.
Right.
But there was always a tension. Even when I was a trustee, some Hawaiians saying, we don't want money, we want land. Others saying we don't need land, what we need is the money. But the final package was actually land worth $200 million. I know that Senator He felt that the appraisals, he was not happy with them, but it seemed that the trustees were very happy to accept a land-only package. And I think everyone this year realized, the last few years, that the state does not have $200 million. If it did, it would be in the general fund for things like our education instead of furloughing it. Do you think that this group of people and the governor all had that in common, that they relinquished this idea for money and they went for land? Did that play a role in this?
Well, I'm really happy you mentioned that because, you see, I was never of that thought. I always felt that the Hawaiian people, really, the Aina came first. My thoughts going back to the settlement bill in the beginning is that I felt that how the settlement bill was managed was not pono. We were told when the governor had called me a day before that the press conference was going to be held.
Yeah, everyone was shocked by that.
Yes, and and then the Senate, then it became a separation of power issue, because the Attorney General in the state of Hawaii serves both of us, serves the executive and serves the legislature. So we felt that, where in the whole world, in the real world, does your attorney, after they cut a deal, come and tell you, hey, sign off on it? So for me and Senator He, because of our long history, with Hawaiian issues, we felt that that was not appropriate. Now, we had discussed it with the governor because we felt the $200 million was not appropriate, simply because the kaka'ako land is ceded land. And we, in fact, have 20% of that.
That's right.
So the actual settlement we felt was $160 million, that it was not, in fact, $200 million. Now, OHA had their own mana'o, which is okay, because, that's the process. That's why OHA's there, the legislature, the judiciary, the executive. So our point at the time was, okay, you've made the settlement, and we feel that if what we call the entitlements were included as part of the package. Now, what are the entitlements? The entitlements are your permits, what you can and you cannot do with the AINA. So if we felt that we were given the entitlements so that we truly exercise our sense of sovereignty to make the decisions as to how we want to develop the lands, then it's a good deal. Not to come under the jurisdiction of HCDA, and having to look to them. We felt that OHA should be given the choice. Maybe they want to go under the new Public Lands Development Corporation, which has a lot more flexibility, a lot more of what they could possibly do.
I think when you and Senator He raised this issue in the legislature, I think that many people initially were thinking as you two were. We have a settlement package here. Lands are coming over to OHA. Everyone was thinking, well, that means that OHA will be the master of their ship. OHA will be the one to make these decisions. And then the issue of the entitlements was raised, and people began to say, wait a minute, are we going to receive this land for OHA to use and to develop, or are we not? And that is what then prompted another bill. It also came in from the legislature, House Bill 2819, which was then referred to as the entitlements bill.
Correct.
What was in the House Bill 2819 that was not in the settlement bill? The housing.
Yes. The point of contention was the Mackay parcels, because there were 3 parcels that was included. Was the Mackay parcel. Because evidently, when the project had gone before the public, when A&B, Alexander and Baldwin, was interested in developing the AINA, there was a lot of uproar from the public in terms of doing any kind of residential development on the Mackay side. Now, my position on that is the Hawaiians were living on the Mackay side before. They were kicked out.
Yes.
That's the bottom line. So now here we're getting the AINA back after all of these years, and we're talking going way before statehood.
Yes.
We're talking about doing the territorial government. We're going way beyond that. Now the Hawaiians get their AINA back, and now, the government is saying, or whatever entity that's representing government say, no, you can't develop the Mackay side. You can't have any residential on the Mackay side. I felt that to be very inappropriate. And it didn't, to me, it didn't make sense when the legislature voted unanimously. I think maybe there were I think the Republicans voted against the recognition bill. But here we are, recognizing the Hawaiian people, the Kanaka Maoli, as our equals. And yet we're still telling the Hawaiians, this is what they can do, this is what they cannot do. Now, unfortunately, we were not able to get that kaka'ako piece passed out of the legislature.
The entitlement bill failed.
Yes.
It did not cross over, but the settlement bill did pass and has been signed into law.
Right. So,
what does this mean? Will it come back next year? Any discussion with yourself and Senator He to put this in as a Senate measure?
I don't think so. I think now, because it's already POW and because it was a settlement, and I had great difficulty with all of this philosophically. Because, OHA under the Constitution is empowered to represent the Hawaiian people.
Yes, as a lead agency.
Yes, I had a lot of philosophical, like I say, hardship in trying to deal with the overall mentoring of these legislations.
Well, I think,
but I felt, if I may, I felt that, I had to respect the Office of Hawaiian Affairs in terms of their negotiations. And I had, Senator He and I came to that agreement with the governor. And we, as I said earlier, we did the entitlements in a separate piece of legislation. It did not pass. But however, if you look at the Senate committee report that came out of the committee that I'm vice chairing, Water and Land, in the committee report where it expresses the intent of the legislature, mentions and talks about the whole issue of the entitlements and how OHA should be given the prerogative to look to the the Public Lands Development Corporation, because under this kuleana, this gives them much more latitude in being able to decide if they so want to do any kind of residential on the Makai side. That's the bottom line.
You know, what I was going to ask you was when I read the settlement bill as it came out, it was pretty clear. This is the package. Don't change a word.
Yeah.
Don't add a paragraph. If you make any changes, this is going to be dead. When the entitlement issue came out, I was just saying, wait a minute, this is a critical issue. And then the position that had come from the Senate, we need to put the entitlement bill into the settlement bill. Let's merge both of them.
Okay,
now, when that didn't happen, I thought there was a deal struck that the entitlement bill would be looked at fairly and would also be supported. It appeared, though, at the last month of the session, there was no deal.
Well, you know, that's the nature of the beast,
It
you know,
sure
of the
is.
legislature. So, you know, I don't really want to get too much involved with that, because, you know, I could just go on and on for a couple hours on that. But for me, the focus of getting the entitlement piece, you know, into the settlement was critical, simply because I felt that this sets a template for how we're going to negotiate in the future. Because, you know, we're looking at the big settlement, you know, which involves the public trust lands, which is
For the Hawaiian Nation.
Yes, which is much, you know, a bigger issue.
Yes, and it will come.
Yes, it will. So this is why I had encouraged all of my senators. I said, you know, in leadership, you have to look to what's going to happen in the future, because all your legislations set a precedence as to what we're going to consider in the future. So I felt by including the entitlements, then we would have brought that issue to rest. That when the Hawaiian Nation or the Hawaiian people come in and OHA or whoever it may be comes in to negotiate with the legislature, the entitlements are part of the piece. And the reason I feel very strongly about that, because it wasn't the Hawaiians' problem, that it took the legislature since statehood 50 plus years to finally address this particular issue that has been part of the law since then. So, you know, the economy of the islands have changed dramatically. So my feeling is, when the Hawaiians get their aina, they should be entitled to do as they please. So zoning should not be an issue. That's what the entitlements are all about. Yeah, zoning should not be an issue. That should be decided by the nation.
You know, I've always felt that there is a precedent for it, because zoning is not really something that is imposed upon others of our trust lands like the Hawaiian homelands. The Hawaiian homelands are treated very differently, and they're not subject to many of the county restrictions. They have some
well, the Hawaiian homes
independence.
piece is a whole different piece, because as you know, your homesteads, you really don't have any equity.
That's true.
You see. But when you're talking about a settlement involving like Kaka'ako, you're talking about a settlement that involves the public trust lands, we're talking about lands that have tremendous equity and tremendous collateral. So once you move into that space, you know, you're talking a whole different ball game, and then you flush out a lot of others that normally would not concern themselves, getting involved. And that's what I'm talking about, the legislative process. So this is something, and you know how I see my role in there, Millie, is I really see my role as, I just want to use my institutional know-how, you know, and my ability of how to get things done to really help the young leadership that's in the Senate. You know, I'm in a situation now where most of my colleagues, you know, are maybe 10, 15, 20 years younger than I am. And I just, you know, I feel that I want to be able to provide some kind of guidance, because these issues are huge.
They are.
Yeah, these are not small issues.
But you know, Malama, I think that already you can see the difference, because the two big pieces that you had passed last year, the inventory piece and the recognition bill, those were major pieces of legislation for Hawaiians, but I don't really think that junior senators could have done it. I really think it had to be somebody with your kind of background. And again, this year, the settlement bill moving, you know, the thing is that you cannot expect this kind of major legislation to go forward.
I kind of have to give a lot of credit, like, to my colleague, like Senator Donovan De La Cruz. You know, to me, he's a young senator.
Yeah.
You know,
he's done a good job. I've been real impressed with him.
And I think that, you know, like his kind of thoughts, his kind of mana'o, I think really reflects many of the young leadership, you know, in there.
Yeah.
In other words, you know, they know these big issues are still unresolved for the Hawaiian people. They really want to get it settled.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they want Hawaii to start moving on.
I think he did a very good job. And, you know, partly, though, I think, Malama, partly it is because you have some senior members in the Senate. They can show a framework. They can show a vision. And then you have some young, bright ones like Don De La Cruz. He sees that this is the right way. He does everything he can. And he was chair.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He was sitting there as a chair, and he really did a very good job. I enjoyed working with him. Let's take a look at the energy bills, because you played a major role in the passage of 2 bills. For the Big Island, it was critical because both measures dealt with geothermal energy. And I'm thankful that you brought this PowerPoint that you have used. You've used this PowerPoint
as an education
now,
piece.
With a community, with other legislative bodies.
Yes.
But let's talk a little bit about the geothermal and the energy legislation that you ushered through. And actually, I want to say that there was a good effort. All of our legislators on the Big Island, with yourself, I think the Senate was clearly in the lead on it, but we had good support.
Yes, we did.
Denny Kaufman from Kona, who
Yes.
chaired the House Energy Committee, Mark Nakashima, who was also on the House Energy Committee. But I think your impression.
And I want to thank you. You did a really wonderful job.
Well, it was a difficult job, but I think with everyone working together, and, you know, even Bill Ayla, DLNR, Lloyd Haraguchi, and all of them coming in, but the specter of geothermal, now I think things have hoolied over, especially with Hawaiians taking the lead in support for geothermal energy.
Well, as you know, this whole geothermal energy has a really long history.
Yeah, we were both there.
Yes, we were both there.
25 years ago,
yes,
demonstrating.
25 years ago. And I keep telling, you know, all my colleagues that, you know, we went through all of it. We went through all of it. You know, this is why we put the subzones in there. And this is why geothermal was only allowed to be developed on private properties. But, you know, it's not working. It's not working. You know, we've had that plant in Puna. It's had so many problems, and a lot of it is because it's on private property. You know, there's negotiations that are made behind the closed doors. You know, we have no idea as to what exactly is going on in terms of how do they arrive at the cost of the resource.
Yeah.
You know, how they arrive when they start to distribute the power. So I think that a lot of this, you know, these kinds of problems now need to be avoided. And the reasons is simple. You know, we're exporting $6 billion out of this state annually for fossil fuels, for transportation and electricity. You know, everybody is paying outrageous costs for electricity, you know, highest in the nation.
Yes.
You know, so I think we've come full circle. So for me, I was always a tremendous supporter of geothermal energy. And a lot of this does come from our mana'o in terms of how we view Pele, you know, and her legendary sisters. You know, I've always felt that Pele and her legendary sisters always helped mankind. You know, this is why her kinulau, like I explained that. I explained that on the floor yesterday. Yeah. You know, as a matter of fact, I was kind of really going so deep into it because, you know, there has to be clarification, you know, on it. And I get really disturbed when people start using Pele's name in all kinds of ways, you know, and so much of this is being done now by the environmental groups. You know, the
Yes,
Sierra
and,
Club, Earth
Sierra Club
Justice,
has an actual 21-year-old policy opposed to geothermal.
Yeah.
They haven't taken a look at what has happened with technology, our island energy needs, our crisis. They're still 21 years back, and Palikapo Deadmen trying to now resurrect the Pele Defense Fund. The thing is that we won the Supreme Court case.
Right.
We didn't lose it.
Absolutely.
25 years ago, we won that case. All of our rights have been protected. You know, there are thousands of Pele worshippers on the Big Island. All the halal come for Mary Monarch.
Yes.
There hasn't been a single Hawaiian Pele practitioner prevented from worshiping because of the building in Puna. It has not occurred.
No.
I was so glad to hear your statement on the floor focusing on Pele and saying that we're tired of people dragging her out, including environmentalists. You know, that's exactly the same position about Pele always nurturing and helping the Hawaiian people. This is what Cy Bridges, Kumu Cy Bridges has also said as well.
And our family has always believed that, and you know, and we manifest these thoughts in our interpretation of the hula. You know, we always call her sister Hi'iaka the poet and the healer. You know, where Pele had empowered her, you know, with her kinulau, so that she could go and she fought the mo'os, you know, on her way to Lanai and release the water to go to Waianae, you know, always to help mankind, you know, and I see the geothermal energy in this same spirit, you know, in terms of allowing us, you know, to be able to live in these islands and to really, you know, really echo the whole thought of Moku o Keawe, you know, the Maluhia, you know, the land of peace and serenity. Well, you know, if you can't pay your electricity bills, you know, I don't see how you can live. So that's no peace and serenity for a family.
And for the Big Island, I mean, people on Oahu are concerned because they're paying 30 cents. We're paying 10 cents more. And by the end of the year, we'll probably be paying 50 cents a kilowatt hour. Big Island with geothermal energy is still paying the highest in the state and the nation.
And it's not going to change unless we get this firm power, which we've finally this session we declared geothermal energy as a firm power, a firm indigenous.
The two bills, 3003 and 2001, both of them have your name and Senator Kahele's name on it. Joining you on 3003 was Brickwood Galateria and Miley Shimabukuro. But if you could tell us a little bit about Senate Bill 3003, what it did, and then we'll take a look at 2001. I think both of these bills are incredibly important for the Big Island. Incredibly for the state, because Maui has geothermal as well.
Okay, now, I know you know this, but in 2006, I ran for governor. With my good friend, Randy Iwase. And we challenged the Lingle administration, you know, which we were the underdogs the whole time. But what astounded me, what I walked away from that campaign is that, because I went, you know, statewide, and I noticed that so many of our kama'ainas, you know, our residents, were just so downtrodden. You know, they're facing the situations now where you can't, you know, the kamali'i, the children can't buy a house. You know, they're all living at home, you know, with mom and pops. You know, there's mom and pops still working. You know, we're trying to, you know, take care of our mo'opunas. You know, I mean, it was so overwhelming for me, you know, when I saw this thread, this common thread, like this lay that just went throughout the state, you know, and I'm telling myself, oh my God, what are we doing? So when I hit the legislature this session, I came up with a bill to eliminate all income tax for the middle class, you know. So now, I was brought up in the old school of leadership. Whenever if you want to be a responsible leader, when you're coming up with exemptions, when you're coming up with tax credits, you also have an obligation to come up with a piece of legislation as to how you are going to generate revenues to replace whatever you're exempting or you're taking away.
Boy, I agree.
So this is why I came up with Senate Bill 3003. Because what this bill allows is that it fast-tracks geothermal energy exploration on our public lands and our public trust lands. Because my whole thought is this, is that the general public and the Hawaiian people have to own this resource. Because when this resource is developed on our public lands, we own this resource. We're going to be the direct beneficiaries of this resource. And in the future, reduce all income taxes.
You know, this is why I really,
this is a huge thought.
I think the thing is, when you look at the one geothermal plant we have in Puna, which has significant problems, and it's due to old technology.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, we don't, if we were using new, efficient technology, we wouldn't have the problems we have there. But, you know, when you look at it, hundreds of millions of dollars over a period of 30 years is going to be made only by private sector,
right,
by a company from Israel. And these are public trust assets. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
We need to start developing our own public trust energy assets
what
and
is
put the money
Millie,
in the general fund.
What is happening now in today's Hawaii is that they did a study. The study is saying we're losing 6% of our local population every year. Yeah. Now, who is that? That's
Not
our
the population,
youngest,
but the local population.
Yeah, our youngest and our brightest. You know, they took a survey of all public high schools. Now, for me in leadership, these are really meaningful, very meaningful. To me, this motivates you to get out there and to figure out what can we do to turn this around. Yeah. There was another piece that said, for the first time in Hawaii, when they went and they randomly sampled seniors from all of our public schools, 3 simple questions. Do you see yourself working in Hawaii? Do you see yourself living in Hawaii? And if you do go away to school, you know, because many of our young people do you see yourself coming back to Hawaii to live? All the answers said no. Why? Because we're not providing the kind of jobs that our new Hawaii, our new generations want. You know, they don't really see themselves working in the tourist industries, in the hospitality industries. You know, tourism is an industry on the decline. And yet we're still using our transient accommodation tax, cash dollars, to keep funding, you know, an industry that's on the decline. Now, my thoughts are, why aren't we taking 80 million of that transient tax and putting it towards the development of geothermal energy that's going to give us a future? You know, why aren't we putting it towards our Public Lands Development Corporation that's going to redefine our harbors?
Well, I think we're going to see the PLDC moving now, and I'm with the geothermal subzones having been eradicated, taken off the books. They're repealed now by 3003.
Right.
And the priority that you were able to get into Senate Bill 2001, it acknowledges geothermal as the most reliable source for firm power. You know, people are always saying, the environmentalists, you heard it all session, will go with wind, will go with solar. Well, intermittent power is not firm power. You know, we have things like hospitals, emergency services that need electricity 24/7. You can't shut down the hospital because the wind isn't blowing. And these are things that I think is really important in terms of understanding distinction between firm power and intermittent. But I really do believe that Hawaii has the ability to create new renewable energy industry.
Yes,
not only geothermal, but all the renewables.
Yes.
You know, we're so blessed.
Yes, we
that
are.
the Creator has given us firm power.
And that's what I found that was so disturbing when we were debating the issue on the inter-island cable. You know, which the bill simply says, you know, put it under PUC, let PUC start to draft rules and regulations. You know, that's all. Right? Get it out of the ledge, get it to where it really belongs under the PUC, under the Public Utilities Commission. Let them start to draft the rules and regulations. You know, what do we mean by underwater sea cable? You know, let's get the definitions down. What do we mean by a high voltage cable? Let's start to define all of that. You know, what do we mean in terms of how many megawatts is going to be needed, you know, to service Oahu? Because there's no doubt Oahu is where all the users are. I couldn't believe it. The neighbor islands, and in particular Maui and Hawaii, we ended up fighting with Oahu. on this debate.
Yeah.
You know, where Oahu's over there. Hey, wait now. You know, although it passed with 22 votes, but look at the record. A lot of them were with reservations.
Many were with
Yes.
reservations.
Now, my question to them, I mean, I got to the point where I was saying, well, what do you want to do? You know, we're spending $1.5 million a day. These dollars are being exported out of the state of Hawaii. Now, don't you think that would be so awesome if we could keep that $1.5 million in our own economy and start to provide a future for our future generations, start taking care of our kupuna, start really funding education, you know, in terms of giving it the priority that it rightfully deserves,
You know,
investing in our future?
I think part of it is that people see the economy is depressed. They feel the hard times, but they don't make the link that billions are leaving every year for fossil fuel, and we don't
And
we have to
food,
stop
Millie,
it.
food.
Yes, the other side of the coin of energy is food security.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know,
That's why
90% of our food.
I really want to see geothermal developed on the Big Island, because that is our breadbasket to feed Oahu.
And geothermal energy can start to process our food
Absolutely.
very economically, so we
Yes.
can export.
Absolutely, we can do it, and it's being done now in
Well,
other countries.
anyway, you know, that's a whole different
You
show.
know, we could talk about this for
Yes,
another
we can.
hour,
We
but
can.
as we come down to our last 5 minutes, I have to
Yes.
talk with you about the redistricting case, because that was a landmark case, and you were the person who brought it from
Yes,
the
I
Big
did.
Island,
Yes.
and now it has resulted in some new districts. We have a map of the new districts for the Big Island I wanted to look at, but let's talk about the redistricting case.
Right.
Why you felt like you had to take it to court.
Well, simple reasons, yeah. You know, the population, the greatest growth of population was on the island of Hawaii. You know, our population had increased by 35,000 people. You know, the bottom line is that I really always felt, because I was part of that legislation when it happened way back when, yeah, that the military are to be extracted. 110, we have about 120 military personnel living here in our Hawaii, but voting in their home states.
So they are not residents here?
No.
And they shouldn't be voting
That's
here?
absolutely correct.
How many were there?
It was about 120, but they verified 110,000.
110,000.
Absolutely. You know, and anyway, so yes, I took it to the Supreme Court.
And where were those military people? On Oahu, primarily.
Absolutely.
And so Oahu was having a greater representation
Yes,
in the
they were.
legislature.
And they always were.
You know, we had talked about this a little bit earlier when I asked you what was it that really pushed you to bring that court case, and you were saying that
to change
it was
the matrix
the right
in the
of
Senate.
voters.
Yeah, and to change the matrix in the Senate.
Exactly.
It takes 13 votes to get anything passed in the Senate. If you have another senator coming from the neighbor islands, gives us 7. You know, it's not an Einstein idea. You know, you just get one friend, one colleague, and it's not difficult because we all serve in capacities of chairman and vice chairman. Yeah, we're up to 14 votes. So I think a lot of this math had a lot to do of what drove the reapportionment committee to come up with their recommendations, which were not pono.
That's right. They were Oahu-centric. They
Absolutely.
were primarily Oahu people.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to see Oahu lose that critical vote.
No.
Because the Big Island really needed to have some redistricting done. And, you know, it was in both in the House and Senate. But when we look at the picture now, the new districts that have come about.
Correct.
And also, one of them will be your district, because
Yes.
you have taken out papers.
Yes, I have. I pulled my papers, so I'll be running for the new district, Senate District 4, which is North and South Kohala. I go all the way to Hilo, right out at Pauka'a. I pass Keohole Airport, and I go up Ka'iminani, Kona Palisades, and I go all the way up Mamalahoa, and I end up at Kalokumauka. Geographically, I have one of the largest, again, which I'm familiar with that. I've always
Right.
been in that situation.
This is another district
Yes.
that you'll be in for the first time, a new district.
Yes, a new district, but with a lot of old friends, because I was very much in support of uniting North and South Kohala and the Hamakua, because this is our huge ag districts.
It sure is.
For our future in food security.
Now, you know, because you have taken out your papers, I think people were saying the first time around you were able to be bold. You had an appointment. You didn't know anybody anything, including the party. But now you will be running for office. You know, there was a period there where people were wondering, are you going to come back in the game? Are you going to throw your hat in? Something made you decide yes. Why are you running, Malama? Let us know.
Well, it's no secret, but the governor and I are good friends, you know, and he was very instrumental in helping me to make that decision. And then, of course, the fact that my daughter has chosen to go to Manoa was another big piece, you know, so I was kind of waiting for her to decide if she was going to go away to school, and if she was, then that would have a, you know,
I know, being a
my
Democrat
decision.
myself, and also, you know, participating in some of our precinct and party work on the island.
Yes.
I know
Conventions
that many
tomorrow.
people approached you.
Yes, they
voters.
have.
I know that there were people in county government and members of the House and Senate both.
Yes.
That came to you, and you know, I gotta say, I think it was because of your ability to get major legislation passed this year. Also steering the ship and having a big impression this year for geothermal as well as Hawaiian, last year as well, that I think that there was kind of a groundswell, at least from Democrats and our House and Senate members. But I think part of it is they feel that you're a key person in terms of moving significant legislation and providing that kind of leadership to the entire Senate. I mean, I think that that was really what was being expressed. And now tomorrow is our county.
Yes, conventions.
Yeah.
And it's going to be real exciting.
And you will be?
Yes, I have the privilege of chairing our county convention on the Big Island. It's going to be at the Honoka'a High School. That's where the Democrats meet and have their conventions.
Yeah.
And we have I think we have over 13 plus resolutions that are looking at all of these issues. And I'm looking forward to the convention. I was in my political leadership, I've always linked the convention to my legislations. I think it's important that that piece has to fit. So I'm looking forward to what's going to happen.
That is supposed to be how the convention works. Party members come in, hear the initiatives we want from our island. It then moves to government. But as you know, it doesn't always work that way.
No, it doesn't.
I'm glad to hear that you will be steering the ship, because that means that the resolutions that you get out will be passing. Senator, thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much.
I certainly will be somebody on the Big Island supporting you 100%. And I can't encourage you more than those on our island to participate, and let's get you elected. And we have some other folks as well. We need to have a team back in there. Thank you for coming on the First Friday show. I'm hoping our listening audience will tune in next time. Remember, you heard it first on the First Friday show.
Mahalo. Thank you.